Joining us for more on China's tech future is Andy Mock. He's a senior research fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. Andy, give us a glimpse inside the five-year plan. Where does China stand right now when it comes to these important technologies and innovation, which has been a catchword for the last few years in China?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Mike. I think the place to start to understand where China is heading from a technological perspective is, of course, as you mentioned, the 14th five-year plan. And this is rooted, first of all, in providing a better life for the people of China. We've seen that over the past several years, whether it's a public health crisis, whether it's a natural disaster or geopolitical issues, that technology resiliency is very, very important. So the 14th five-year plan is designed to address that, to create greater resiliency, insulate China from these kinds of external shocks.
Interesting. There also seems to be this focus right now on this battle for the future with AI, big data, 5G, machine learning, really getting a lot of attention of late and a lot of focus with journalists. Can you talk to us about some of the advantages that China has at this stage when it comes to these defining technologies?
Absolutely. So China is an enormous country, of course, from a population perspective, a big economy, a rapidly growing economy. And I think one thing we need to recognize, too, is the tempo at which things happen in China. We look at product launches, consumer adoption, and this is very important for technologies like artificial intelligence that rely on data. So the Chinese economy, the Chinese society produces torrents of data. So the big challenge then is how to harness that data with hardware, with software algorithms to build a modern and advanced society that benefits China, but also the world, as we see now that more and more companies, whether they're the TCLs making televisions or the TikToks that use artificial intelligence to entertain people, but also create livelihoods for people all around the world that can become these TikTok creators. So I think this is one of the big advantages. Another advantage, of course, is the Chinese government's ability to coordinate and mobilize resources across all sectors of the economy and society. So whether from national government policy, provincial, municipal government policy, research institutions, private business, consumer behavior as well, as we see with Consumer Rights Day, that really the Chinese government's ability to coordinate and integrate, I think, is another important strength.
You mentioned TikTok. I think of TikTok and Huawei. I think of the waning days of the Trump administration and efforts to really kind of contain China's rise, in a sense, when it comes to these technologies. Do you see much of a change on the landscape there, or is this still going to be an area of friction between the United States and China moving forward, do you think?
Well, I think this is a very big question mark, not just China, but for the U.S. as well. Certainly the rhetoric of the Biden administration is not as overtly hostile. I'm personally cautiously optimistic in that we could see a hallmark of the Trump administration was this blind hostility to China that in fact turned out to be quite self-destructive to the U.S. Whereas I think when we look at the Biden administration, starting with President Biden, that this is a person, a man who is focused more on compromise, working with others, not against others. Also, I think the administration is very pragmatic and realistic and sees the emerging world order. The U.S., of course, has for decades been able to have much more autonomy globally, and we see now with a Chinese economy that is expected to surpass the U.S. perhaps in the next 5 years in nominal terms. It's already bigger in purchasing power parity terms. China's increasing technology leadership as well, that some of these realities might have been overlooked or deliberately ignored by the previous administration, but certainly it seems that this administration is much more clear-eyed, much more pragmatic. And I think that is a cause for at least a little optimism in the ability to manage this conflict, in particular the technology competition.
Well, we will leave it there. Always a pleasure talking to you. Andy Mock joining us from Beijing.